Welcome to Starbound Valor HFY. Subscribe now and dive into daily epic sci-fi adventures, where humanity always rises. The outer edge of human space was a quiet and empty place, a long dark region where stars seemed to hide behind dust and cold silence. For 200 years, the galaxy followed one rule, a rule carved into every treaty, every command book, and every star map: do not enter human space. The reason behind the rule was never clear to the young races of the galaxy. Some believed humans were too violent and unpredictable. Some believed humans were hiding ancient technology. Others believed that humans had vanished from fear, that they had sealed their borders because they were too weak to fight the great empires rising around them. But the truth was something far more dangerous, and the Empire was about to learn it the hard way. On the bridge of the Empire's flagship, the warship Dominance, Admiral Zorth stood tall, his four eyes shining with confidence. His armor plates glowed with command authority, and his soldiers moved with strict discipline. Before him, the giant holomap displayed the invisible line floating through space, the border of human territory. The warning beacon pulsed slowly, repeating the same message in every known language. Turn back. Do not enter. This is your only warning. Zorth laughed when he heard the human message again. To him, it was cowardice. It was weakness. It was a sign that humans wanted to scare the Empire away without showing real strength. He believed humans were hiding behind his border because they were afraid of confronting a true empire like his. The crew waited for the command, but Zorth only lifted his hand slowly and said, "Forward. Cross the line. Let us see if these humans are brave enough to stop us." The fleet moved inside human space, thousands of engines lighting up the darkness. The moment they crossed, something subtle changed. A wave of silence spread through the sensors. Some officers checked their consoles, thinking it was a malfunction. Some thought it was a human trick, but it was neither. It was something deeper, something older, something watching them. Far inside human territory, hidden behind giant asteroids and dead moons, human listening stations activated for the first time in years. Silent operators in dark rooms watched screens light up with red markers. The Empire was entering. Human commanders did not panic. They did not shout orders. They simply observed. This silence was strange to the younger operators, who expected shields to rise and fleets to launch immediately. But the older officers knew better. They knew that humans did not react quickly because they did not need to. Humanity had prepared for this day for decades. Humanity knew someone would eventually break the rule, and humanity had no intention of letting them leave alive. On the Dominance, one of Zorth's sensor officers raised his voice nervously. "Admiral, I am detecting movement. Very small signatures. They are fast, too fast." Zorth smirked. "Human scouts, no doubt. Let them look. Let them run. We are the Empire. We fear no shadows." But the officer shook his head. "They are not running. They are circling us." Zorth turned sharply. "Circling? How many?" The officer swallowed. I cannot count. They are too many, moving too quickly." The entire bridge felt colder. The Admiral stepped forward, staring at the sensor screen where dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of faint signatures blinked in and out of detection. They were not approaching. They were surrounding. Something about their movement was not normal. They were not flying like normal ships. They were gliding. Silent. Cold. Watching. Zorth straightened his shoulders and said loudly, trying to hide his unease, "Prepare the fleet's shields. If humans want to scare us with tricks, we will show them what fear truly is." But deep inside his mind, something felt wrong. These signatures were too controlled, too precise, too disciplined, and worst of all, too numerous. Normally, humans were known to keep a small fleet, only enough to defend their own systems. But this was a hidden force. This was a secret fleet no empire knew existed. Still, Zorth pushed the doubt away. He would not show weakness in front of his crew. As the Empire's ships flew deeper, the darkness around them grew thicker, almost alive. The stars seemed to fade behind some invisible wall. The more they moved forward, the more their sensors flickered and glitched. It was as if the space itself was rejecting them. And then it happened. A loud alarm echoed through the dominance. "Admiral, we just lost Scout Ship 9. Another officer shouted. Zorith snapped around. "How?" The officer whispered. "It vanished. No explosion. No distress signal. It was there 1 second and gone the next." The fleet stopped moving. Even Zorith felt a chill crawl up his spine. He tried to speak, but at that exact moment, the bridge screen changed. A new message had appeared, this time direct and personal. A human voice. "Calm. Deep. Cold. You have crossed the forbidden border. You were warned. Turn back now. This is your final warning." Unlike before, this message was not automated. This voice came from a human commander. A real one. A live one. Zorith clenched his fists. "They dare to threaten the Empire? We will break them." He gave his next order. The most dangerous order he would ever make. "Advance." And the Empire fleet moved forward again, deeper into the darkness of human space, unaware that they had just awakened something ancient, powerful, and merciless. Humanity was watching now. And humanity did not forgive. And humanity did not forget. Deep inside human territory, far beyond the silent border, a hidden command center came to life. For years, it remained dark and cold, waiting for the moment the old rule would be broken. Now its walls hummed with energy, screens flashing red as the Empire fleet pushed deeper inside. Human officers moved with calm precision. They did not shout. They did not panic. They had trained for this exact scenario for decades. Commander Arlen Voss stood in the center of the control room, watching the Empire ships through long-range feeds. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He knew what the arrival of the Empire meant. It meant war, or something worse. The young operator beside him whispered, "Sir, should we send a fleet to meet them?" But Arlen shook his head slowly. "Not yet. The Empire thinks we will rush. They think we fear them. Let them think. Let them walk deeper." At the edge of the room, steel doors opened with a heavy echo. A massive hologram activated, showing the Ghost Fleet, an entire human battle group hidden for 50 years. These ships were dark, silent, almost invisible. Their hulls were coated with advanced stealth material that absorbed signals and light. They were humanity's secret guardians. No alien empire had ever seen them. No alien empire even knew they existed. Arlen turned toward his officers. "Activate the Ghost Fleet. Ready them for silent strike." Instantly, deep underground, engines ignited with a low growl. Human dreadnoughts, destroyers, and stealth frigates awakened from their long sleep. For years, they had rested like ancient beasts beneath the surface of dead moons and hollow asteroids. Now they opened their eyes. Across dozens of secret bases, pilots ran to their stations. Lights flickered on inside ships that had not been touched in decades. Human AI systems began to speak again. Ghost Fleet online, awaiting orders. Meanwhile, the Empire continued its slow march deeper into forbidden space. On the flagship Dominance, Admiral Zorith was becoming irritated. These humans play games. They hide behind their darkness. They send warnings like cowards, but they do not fight. His officers, however, were not as confident. One of them leaned closer to Zorith. "Sir, our sensors are weakening the deeper we go. Something is interfering. It feels like we are being watched." Zorith scoffed. "Let them watch. Let them tremble. We are the Empire." But even he felt something strange inside his chest, a feeling he had not felt in years, uncertainty. Without warning, another alarm echoed through the bridge. "Admiral, Scout Ship 11 has disappeared," an officer shouted. "Destroyed," Zorith demanded. The officer shook his head. "No, sir, it simply vanished. Exactly like Scout Ship 9. A strange silence filled the bridge. Zorith clenched his teeth, but forced himself to remain calm. "Continue forward. Humans are trying to scare us. I will not turn back." But the Empire's confidence was fading with every kilometer. Back in human command, Commander Arlen watched the Empire fleet lose another scout. His expression did not change. "Good. They are starting to understand." Beside him, another officer asked, "Sir, should we cloak the Ghost Fleet and surround them?" Arlen nodded. "Begin silent formation. No weapons. Only observation. I want every Empire ship shadowed. And so the ghost fleet moved. They slipped into the void like shadows from a forgotten nightmare. They accelerated without sound, without trace, each one blending into the darkness until they became invisible. When they reached the Empire fleet, they spread out in a perfect circle, forming a silent cage. They did not attack. They did not reveal themselves. They only watched. On the Dominance, the sensor officer felt sweat forming on his forehead. He stared at the flickering screen. Admiral, I am reading strange shapes around us, but they appear and disappear. I cannot get a lock. What shapes? Zorth demanded. The officer's voice trembled. Ships, sir. Many ships. But they are not on our radar. They appear only when the light from distant stars hits them at the right angle. Zorth stepped closer. Show me. The officer zoomed in. The screen flickered. Then, for a single second, the outline of a massive human battlecruiser appeared, then vanished again. Everyone on the bridge froze. Zorth's eyes widened. Impossible. Humans cannot hide a ship that size. The officer whispered, Sir, I think they have a full fleet around us. Zorth slammed his fist against the console. Find them. Scan again. But the sensors only showed darkness. The humans were too well hidden, too advanced, too quiet. Meanwhile, deep inside the secret human facility, Commander Arlen gave the next order. Enable Protocol Black Shield. A hush fell over the control room. The officers exchanged tense glances. Black Shield was the oldest and most dangerous defense protocol. It meant no escape for the intruders. It meant the Empire would be trapped inside human space, unable to leave. Arlen's voice was calm. The Empire has crossed too far. We must prepare for containment. At the same time, small human drones launched from hidden bases. They flew silently, spreading a thick electromagnetic field behind the Empire fleet, blocking all possible escape routes. The trap was closing. Inside the Empire flagship, another officer suddenly gasped. Admiral, our jump drives are losing power. Zora spun around. What? Why? Something is interfering with the energy flow, the officer answered. It feels like someone is shutting us in. Zorth stared into the darkness of space. For the first time, he felt fear crawling into his heart. The Empire had crossed the forbidden border. Now it was too late to turn back. Humanity had begun its silent response, and the trap was almost fully closed. The Empire fleet moved deeper into human space, but now the confidence that filled their ships at the beginning of their journey was slowly fading. The strange silence around them was not normal. Space was never this quiet. There were always signals, radiation, stray transmissions, or echoes of old satellites. But here, inside the human border, it felt like the entire universe was holding its breath. Admiral Zorth stood on the bridge, staring at the screen that showed only darkness. No stars, no debris, no signals. It was as if the fleet was floating inside a giant void. His officers worked nervously at their stations, whispering to each other in low voices, afraid to say the wrong thing. Zorth knew why they were afraid. 2 scout ships had already disappeared without a trace, and now the fleet's jump drives were losing power. Something had trapped them here. Something had closed the door behind them. But Zorth refused to accept fear. Humans are playing tricks, he growled. They want us to panic. They want us to turn back. But we will not. Even as he spoke, the bridge lights flickered for a second, like something was brushing against the ship's systems. The sensor officer looked up quickly. Admiral, something just passed by us. Very close. Zorth narrowed his eyes. Another human ship? The officer shook his head. I cannot tell. It was too fast. Almost like a shadow. Zorth tightened his jaw. Scan again. Full power. The officer obeyed, and the ship sent out a powerful pulse through the darkness. For a moment, everything looked empty. Then the pulse bounced off something massive, something enormous, something only 100 meters off their left side. The officers jumped as a faint outline appeared on the screen. It was a ship. A human ship. Gigantic. But it looked like a ghost. The outline showed only for 2 seconds before fading back into the void. Zorth's voice dropped low and cold. How long has that thing been beside us? No one answered. They knew the truth. The human ship had been there for a long time. And if there was one, there were likely more. Deep inside human territory, the Ghost Fleet silently shadowed every Empire ship. Human commanders watched from hidden consoles, tracking every movement of the intruders. Commander Arlen Voss stood with hands behind his back, studying the slow advance of the Empire. "They are starting to feel the pressure," he said calmly. His second-in-command nodded. "Yes, sir. Their formation is breaking. Their flanks are drifting. Their fear is increasing." Arlen gave a slow breath. "Good. But do not attack. Not yet. Let them understand that they are not the hunters here." All around him, the screen showed the Empire ships from multiple angles, as if they were being watched by 1,000 invisible eyes. No matter where the Empire went, no matter what direction they turned, human ships were already there. This was the power of the Ghost Fleet. They moved like shadows. They struck like lightning. They disappeared like smoke. Back on the Dominance, tension continued to rise. A communications officer raised his head suddenly. "Admiral, we are receiving whispers." Zoreth frowned. "Whispers? From who?" "From everywhere," the officer stuttered. "From multiple directions. Thousands of tiny signals. It is like someone is breathing through the radio channels." The bridge grew colder. The sound was not a voice, not a message, just a slow, steady exhale echoing through their comm systems. Zoreth felt the hairs on his neck rise. "Cut the signal." The officer tried. "I am trying, sir." The whispering grew louder for 1 second, then vanished completely. Everyone stared at their consoles. Nothing made sense. It was as if something ancient was watching them from the darkness and testing their reactions. Suddenly, the lights dimmed again and a new alarm rang out. "Admiral, our long-range radar just collapsed," shouted another officer. "We are blind." Zoreth slammed his fist against the console. "How? Is it a human attack?" "No, sir," the officer replied. "It is not an attack. Something is jamming us from all directions." The truth was simple. Humans were closing the trap even tighter. Commander Arlen watched the Empire's radar collapse and nodded. "Their vision is gone. They are now inside our shadow." His second-in-command asked quietly, "Shall we move to Phase 2? Arlen shook his head. "Not yet. I want Zoreth to feel completely helpless first." Back in the Empire fleet, the situation grew worse. Navigation systems flickered. Star maps scrambled. Engines were having trouble keeping the formation together. The Empire fleet was becoming blind, deaf, and isolated. Every officer felt the same fear. They were not alone. Something was around them. Something was watching them. Something they could not see. Finally, Zoreth could not hold back his frustration. He shouted, "Where are the humans? Why do they hide? If they want war, let them face us." As if answering his challenge, the darkness outside flickered. For a brief moment, every officer on the bridge saw shapes, massive shapes, gliding past them. Now they knew. Human ships were everywhere. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. And they had been there the entire time. Zoreth felt his throat tighten. The Empire had not invaded human space. They had walked into a trap. And now they were losing control of everything. For the first time, Admiral Zoreth understood the truth about the warning. Do not enter human space. It was not a threat. It was not fear. It was mercy. And now the mercy was gone. The moment of first contact came without warning, without sound, and without mercy. 1 second the Empire fleet drifted in the silent darkness of human space. And the next, the entire area around them lit up with a thin blue shimmer, like a curtain of cold light rising from nowhere. Every officer on every bridge froze as hundreds of outlines suddenly appeared around the fleet, shapes darker than space itself, gliding slowly, forming a perfect ring. Human ships. The Ghost Fleet had finally revealed itself. Admiral Zoreth stared in shock as the nearest human ship decloaked completely, its massive hull sliding into view like a silent mountain made of black steel. It had no bright colors, no banners, no symbols. Only a single glowing line along its side, pulsing calmly like a heartbeat. The ship made no sound. It simply moved with a slow, deliberate grace that made the Empire soldiers feel small. On the Dominance Bridge, the censor officer almost stopped breathing. "Admiral, that ship was only 20 meters from us the whole time." His voice trembled. Zorath felt something icy settle in his chest, but he forced his voice to stay firm. "Bring shields to full power. Charge weapons." He wanted to see how the humans reacted, but the humans did not react at all. They neither targeted the Empire ships nor moved away. They simply observed. This was not aggression. This was demonstration. This was a message: we surround you completely. Suddenly, every screen in the Empire fleet flickered. A new signal appeared, stronger than any they had detected before. A voice followed. "Calm. Human. Cold. This is Commander Arlen Voss of the United Human Defense Network. You have violated the ancient border. You have ignored all warnings. This is your final chance to retreat." The entire Empire fleet fell silent. Zorath clenched his fists. "They dare to give the Empire orders," he muttered. The communication officer whispered, "Sir, he sounds very confident." Zorath snarled, "He is bluffing." On the human side, Commander Arlen stood inside his dark command chamber, his expression still calm. He watched the Empire fleet from multiple angles on giant screens. He knew exactly what Zorath was thinking. He knew the Empire admired strength, but understood fear. "Maintain formation," Arlen ordered. "No firing. No aggression. Let them decide their fate." The Ghost Fleet continued circling, silent as death. Then, without warning, an Empire destroyer panicked. Its captain could not handle the tension. He fired a warning shot, a single plasma bolt, toward the nearest human ship. The shot flew fast, bright, dangerous. Zorath's eyes widened as he realized what had happened. "No! Cancel that order!" he shouted, but it was too late. The shot hit the human ship directly and simply vanished on impact. No explosion. No sound. The human ship absorbed it like a drop of rain hitting a stone. The Empire bridge filled with horrified whispers. "How? That was a full-strength plasma shot. What technology is that?" They didn't even raise shields, but before anyone could process the shock, the human ship responded, but not with weapons. It moved. One moment it was still, and the next it shot forward with impossible speed, gliding past the destroyer so closely that the Empire soldiers could see glowing patterns pulsing on its hull. Then, with a soft flash, a wave of blue energy spread from the human ship, passing through the Empire destroyer like a ripple through water. Instantly, every system inside the destroyer shut down. Engines, weapons, power, gravity, everything. The ship drifted dead in space. No damage. No casualties. Just complete, total shutdown. The message was clear. We can kill you, but we choose not to. Zorath stared in horror. What was that? The censor officer swallowed. A precision EMP, but far more advanced than anything we have seen. They disabled only weapons and engines. Nothing else. Even the proud Empire felt fear now. Meanwhile, Commander Arlen gave a soft nod. Phase 1 complete. Disable, not destroy. Show them control. His second-in-command asked, Phase 2. Not unless Zorath forces it. Unfortunately, Zorath did. The humiliation of watching one of his ships paralyzed by a single human vessel ignited his fury. Prepare all ships for full engagement, he ordered. Officers hesitated. One whispered, Sir, is that wise? Zorath slammed his hand onto the console. We are the Empire. We do not retreat. As his fleet prepared weapons, human ships began glowing faintly, their hulls lighting up with thin blue lines, forming ancient patterns, like circuits awakening. The Empire fleet fired first. Hundreds of plasma shots surged into the darkness, lighting up the void with violent color. But the humans moved like shadows. Every shot missed. Human ships slipped aside, weaving through the storm of weapons like dancers in slow, controlled motion. Then the humans answered, not with plasma, not with missiles, but with thin beams of blue light that flickered out from their ships and touched the Empire vessels gently. Where the beams landed, entire sections of Empire ships shut down instantly. Engines died. Weapons froze. Shields collapsed. Ships drifted helplessly. It was not a battle. It was a lesson. On the dominance, the bridge lights flickered again, and the human voice returned. This is your final warning, Admiral Zorath. Turn back now. Your fleet is disabled. Your weapons are useless. Retreat, and you may live. Zorath trembled with rage, but behind that rage was fear. Real fear. He had expected a weak enemy. Instead, he had found a nightmare hidden in the dark. For the first time, he wondered if the ancient rule existed not to protect humans, but to protect everyone else from humans. And now, with his ships failing around him and human vessels closing in, he realized the truth. He had no control anymore. The Empire had made its first contact with humanity, and humanity had responded the hard way. The bridge of the Radiant Spear was filled with tension as the crew watched the sensors pick up a massive signature approaching from human space, and Captain Vaylor immediately understood that the Empire's violation had finally provoked a response. No one dared speak, the fear in the room palpable, as the approaching object grew larger on their displays. It was unlike any warship they had ever seen. The data stream struggled to interpret its size and movement. Its hull was sleek and elongated, with glowing lines running across its surface, flowing in a pattern that seemed alive. Then, unexpectedly, a calm, commanding voice echoed across the fleet communications. Identify yourselves and explain your incursion. There was no threat in the tone, yet every officer felt the weight of authority pressing down on them, making trained warriors feel like children facing an unmovable force. Vaylor stepped forward cautiously, sweat dripping from his brow, and explained that the Empire meant no harm, that they were explorers, gathering data, not seeking conflict. There was silence. The sensors suddenly reported a flare of energy from a nearby Empire ship that had fired a probe torpedo automatically as part of standard protocol. The human vessel reacted instantly. Without firing a weapon, it released a short, low-frequency pulse that disintegrated the torpedo mid-flight, leaving the crew of the Empire ship staring in horror at the impossibility they had just witnessed. Vaylor realized that the humans had the power to destroy their weapons without a single shot, technology far beyond the Empire's understanding. Another calm message appeared. Return across the border. You have 1 day. There was no negotiation, only a measured warning, and the crew immediately understood the implication. Any aggression now would be met with overwhelming force. Vaylor tried to argue that they meant no harm, that their intentions were purely scientific, but the human ship responded to his voice as if it could read every thought. You are being observed. Your movements are known. Any false action will trigger consequences. As the crew trembled, more signatures appeared at the edge of human space. Several massive ships formed a blockade, silent yet terrifying, positioning themselves with perfect precision, a demonstration of both power and discipline. None of the ships fired, yet the very formation made it clear that any misstep would be fatal. Vaylor's mind raced. The Emperor's pride demanded that they continue the mission, but Vaylor understood that one false move could destroy them all. The human fleet communicated once more. Your Empire believes the galaxy belongs to you. This is false. Stand down. Vaylor felt the pressure rise, the bridge almost suffocating as he realized the humans did not need to fight to control the Empire fleet. Their mere presence was enough to dictate the outcome. He studied the positions of the human ships, noting the discipline, the calm, and the absolute confidence. Then another energy pulse ran across the fleet, subtle but undeniable, affecting shields, sensors, and engines in ways the Empire crew could not fully understand. Vaylor's officers whispered among themselves, fear and awe mixing in their voices, as he realized that humanity had not reacted with violence yet, but had proven that they could destroy the Empire's fleet at any moment if provoked. The human ship broadcast again. You have been warned. Any further violation will not be tolerated. Vaylor's hands gripped the console tightly. He knew that diplomacy, caution, and respect were the only ways to survive. The dead zone was awakening, and with it, the true power of humanity was becoming clear. The Radiant Spear and its fleet remained poised at the edge of human space, trapped between the Emperor's orders and the reality of a power they had only begun to understand. As every crew member on the bridge felt the impossible weight of restraint and the unspoken threat that one wrong step could change everything forever. The Radiant Spear drifted cautiously as the human fleet maintained its silent blockade, and the crew could feel a tension in the air that made even experienced officers hold their breath. Then, from the darkness of space, an enormous shape began to emerge, unlike any vessel the Empire had ever seen, vast beyond comprehension, with smooth, flowing lines that seemed almost organic, and as it moved, sensors struggled to calculate its size, energy output, and composition, while Vaylor's mind raced to comprehend what this ship represented. It was not only massive but radiated a presence that seemed to reach into the minds of the crew, weighing thoughts and intentions as though it could see every hidden motive, and the ship's hull glowed with a subtle, pulsing light, shifting in color and intensity as if alive, and every officer aboard the Radiant Spear felt their stomachs tighten, knowing that the legends about humans' power were nothing compared to what was before them. The human vessel did not fire weapons or issue threats, yet it commanded complete attention, its very presence enforcing control and discipline. And then a calm, deep voice filled the fleet communications. "Identify your leader of this incursion." Vaylor's throat went dry as he stepped forward and identified himself as Commander Vaylor of the Radiant Spear, under Imperial orders, but even as he spoke, he sensed the ship was reading beyond his words, detecting truth and intention without mercy or judgment, and the human voice responded. "You were warned. This border exists for a reason." Silence fell over the bridge like a tangible weight, pressing against every officer, and Vaylor could feel the realization settle that they were no longer dealing with ordinary humans, but with something ancient, disciplined, and beyond comprehension. Then, as if to demonstrate their power, the human ship emitted a low-energy pulse that rippled through space, brushing past the Radiant Spear, and for a moment the ship's systems flickered, shields adjusted automatically, and engines hummed in response to the pulse, leaving the crew staring in awe and fear at the level of control the humans exerted without even firing a shot. Vaylor realized that this was a test, that humanity did not need violence to dominate, only presence and authority. And then another human vessel appeared from the shadows, identical in design but smaller, moving in perfect coordination as if guided by a single mind, and the two ships positioned themselves around the Empire fleet, silently forming a cage of observation, not attack, yet every movement precise and inevitable. Vaylor tried to communicate, to plead for a safe return, but the response came immediately in his mind and over the comms. "Your empire believes the galaxy belongs to it. This is false. You are contained." He felt his stomach tighten as the word sank in, the concept of containment not as a physical prison, but as a manipulation of space, energy, and perception, and the crew began to whisper among themselves, fear mounting, as they realized that their actions were being predicted before they happened. Another pulse passed over the Radiant Spear, and instruments reported energy fields activating around every Imperial vessel, subtle but unmistakable, forcing shields, engines, and weapons into a temporary adjustment, and Vaylor understood that the humans could disable the fleet entirely if they chose, yet they had not, and he could feel the pressure of their observation, a constant, unrelenting presence, like the eyes of a predator that did not need to attack to dominate. Then the voice came again, calm and measured. "Your emperor has lied to you. You do not understand why this border exists. Your entry weakens containment." Vaylor's stomach dropped as he realized the gravity of their violation. The Empire had not merely trespassed into human space. They had activated forces they could neither understand nor control, and the humans were responding not with hostility, but with a teaching presence, demonstrating the consequences of arrogance. He glanced at his crew, seeing pale faces, wide eyes, and trembling hands, as the full scope of the situation sank in. They were alive only because humanity allowed it, and every movement they made was observed, analyzed, and judged. The massive ship pulsed again, light rippling over its surface, forming intricate patterns in the void, and Vaylor understood that this was a display not of aggression, but of sheer power and ancient knowledge, a warning that the humans were far beyond the Empire's ability to fight or even negotiate with. Then, faintly in the distance, other human ships began to emerge, creating a network of observation and containment, moving in silent, perfect coordination, a demonstration of intelligence, strategy, and control that no Imperial officer had ever imagined possible, and Vaylor felt the weight of responsibility crush him as he realized that the fleet's survival depended not on guns, shields, or orders, but on obedience, patience, and respect for something greater than themselves. The voice came one final time. "We are guardians. You are alive only because you have learned, even now, that understanding and respect are more valuable than pride and aggression." And in that moment, as the human vessels held their positions like silent titans watching, Vaylor understood fully that humanity's power was not in war, but in discipline, foresight, and absolute control, and that the Empire had crossed a line it could never unsee, leaving every officer on the Radiant Spear trembling, awed, and painfully aware of how little they truly understood of the forces they had provoked. The Empire fleet drifted deeper into the dead zone, a vast and silent expanse of space that had long been marked on old charts as forbidden, and the tension on the Radiant Spear was almost unbearable as sensors began to register strange energy fluctuations, and the air in the bridge felt thick with anticipation and fear. Captain Vaylor stared at the displays, his mind racing, as massive structures began to emerge from the darkness, hulks of metal and alien architecture floating silently, long, abandoned but still alive with a faint, eerie energy that pulsed in rhythm with the unknown forces around them, and every officer aboard felt a shiver run down their spine, because these were not natural formations, not derelict wrecks, but something ancient, designed to monitor and respond to intruders. And Vaylor realized with growing horror that the Empire had entered a space it could not control. Suddenly, from the shadows, shapes began to move, ghostly, massive human dreadnoughts appearing, as if from nowhere, their hulls glowing with faint blue light, and the sensors could barely comprehend them, reporting sizes, energy outputs, and positions that defied known physics, and Vaylor felt the weight of their presence in his chest, the unmistakable feeling that the humans were not attacking but observing, reading thoughts and intentions, measuring every microsecond of movement, and a calm, powerful voice filled the comms. "You have entered the dead zone. You are observed. You are contained. No threat, no anger, just absolute authority." And the crew went silent, understanding instinctively that any attempt to resist would be catastrophic. As the fleet drifted, another pulse ran across their ships, causing minor fluctuations in shields, engines, and sensors, enough to remind the crew that every action was being monitored, yet without any visible damage, a demonstration of control that left Vaylor breathless, realizing that this was no ordinary battle. No tactical maneuver could save them, and only patience and respect might allow survival. Then more human dreadnoughts emerged, forming precise geometric patterns around the Empire fleet, their movements deliberate, almost graceful, creating invisible barriers of observation, and Vaylor watched helplessly as every calculated adjustment in velocity or trajectory by his officers was anticipated and countered by subtle energy flows, forcing the fleet to operate within invisible lines of containment. The dead zone itself seemed to respond to their presence, strange lights and ripples of energy pulsing from the structures, interacting with the human fleet as if space itself had awakened, and Vaylor realized with dread that the Empire had triggered mechanisms they could not understand, ancient systems designed to protect human space at all costs. The voice came again, calm but unyielding. "You have violated our borders. You are contained. Any aggression will trigger immediate response." Vaylor felt his stomach twist, knowing that even the slightest hostile act would bring destruction, and he looked around at his crew, pale, tense, and wide-eyed, understanding that survival now depended entirely on discipline and restraint. A new pulse swept over the fleet, causing minor disruptions, shields flickering, engines hesitating, as the dead zone and the human fleet seemed to communicate through energy, a silent network of control and observation, and Vaylor understood the terrifying perfection of what he was witnessing. Humanity's power was not in weapons or fleet numbers, but in absolute control, anticipation, and harmony with forces ancient beyond comprehension. He watched as one of the human dreadnoughts, the Revenant, moved closer, its immense hull glowing with lines of power, and for a moment it seemed almost alive, radiating intelligence and judgment, and the voice returned, filling every mind aboard the Radiant Spear. "We are guardians. You are observed. You are contained. Respect our space, and you may leave alive. Defy it, and you will not leave at all. Vaylor's hands tightened on the helm as he realized that the Empire had not merely trespassed. It had entered a living, conscious system of containment, where humans and ancient machines acted as one to enforce boundaries, and the dead zone pulsed around them, alive, vigilant, and perfect, forcing the Empire fleet to recognize their helplessness. Officers whispered in fear, trying to interpret the phenomena, but Vaylor knew there was no room for error, only submission and careful observation. And as the fleet drifted deeper, more pulses and flashes of energy illuminated the dark expanse, mysterious shapes moving in the shadows, testing, observing, containing, until it was clear to every crew member that survival depended entirely on respecting the authority of the humans and the dead zone, that any arrogance or rash decision would be fatal. And Vaylor, staring at the bridge displays, understood fully the terrifying scale of human power, the precision of their strategy, and the cold, unyielding perfection of containment, knowing that the Empire had entered a domain it could neither dominate nor escape from without consent. And for the first time, the crew felt true humility and fear, and the dead zone pulsed on, alive and vigilant, as humanity silently taught its final lesson in patience, discipline, and dominance. The Empire fleet had no choice but to drift deeper into the dead zone as the human blockade tightened, and Captain Vaylor felt the suffocating weight of awareness pressing down on the bridge, a presence that seemed to read every thought, every hesitation, and every instinct of his crew. The enormous human dreadnoughts moved with eerie precision, positioning themselves at exact intervals, creating invisible walls of energy that guided, restrained, and contained the Empire vessels without firing a single shot, and sensors recorded patterns and energy flows that defied any known physics, as if space itself had become a tool of observation and control. And Vaylor realized that the dead zone was alive, a vast system of ancient machinery now synchronized with the human fleet, communicating in pulses of energy that restricted movement and predicted every possible action. His officers stared at the readouts, their hands shaking as minor systems began to fluctuate, shields flickering, engines hesitating, and weapons locking briefly, all without explanation except for the subtle pulse of power that radiated from the massive human ships and the ancient structures scattered throughout the zone. And Vaylor understood that humanity did not need to attack to dominate. The mere presence of the human fleet in perfect coordination with the dead zone's machines was enough to enforce obedience and control. Then, a calm voice filled every comm channel, and even seemed to resonate inside the minds of the crew. Your fleet is contained. You are observed. Any aggressive action will trigger immediate consequence. The crew went silent, fear and awe combining as they grasped the gravity of their violation, knowing that one wrong move could destroy them all. And Vaylor felt his stomach tighten as he scanned the positions of each ship, understanding that maneuvering was no longer a choice, but a careful negotiation with forces far beyond their comprehension. The dead zone pulsed around them in waves of light and energy, illuminating massive alien structures that had lain dormant for centuries, and now they awakened in response to the intruders, interacting with the human fleet to form a living, breathing trap that restrained the Empire vessels without contact. And Vaylor could feel the enormity of human power, disciplined and deliberate, as the dreadnoughts adjusted their positions, subtly moving in patterns that kept every Imperial ship within invisible lines of control. Another pulse of energy swept through the fleet, causing minor disruptions in sensors and communications, and Vaylor watched. His officers' expressions turned from fear to awe as they realized that nothing they did went unnoticed or unmeasured, and that every attempt at control, evasion, or strategy was anticipated, neutralized, and observed, leaving them entirely at the mercy of forces they could not fight or even predict fully. The Revenant, largest of the human ships, moved closer to the center of the formation, its hull glowing with lines of power, and its presence alone created an almost physical pressure across the fleet, a reminder of the impossibility of escape. And the voice spoke again. "We are guardians. You are observed. You are contained. Your survival depends on your understanding of boundaries." Vaylor's chest tightened as he realized that the humans were not here to punish, but to teach, that their control was absolute not because of aggression, but because of discipline, foresight, and absolute coordination with the dead zone itself, and he glanced at his officers to see pale, tense faces, their pride subdued by the weight of what they now faced. The fleet shifted slightly, following Vaylor's minimal commands, yet every adjustment was mirrored by subtle corrections from the human ships and the energy grids of the dead zone, reinforcing containment with invisible force, and Vaylor understood fully that the Empire's fleet was trapped in a living system, a network of human power and ancient machinery that acted as one, and he could only maintain order through patience, respect, and restraint. A new pulse of light spread across the dead expanse, highlighting enormous structures that seemed to stretch on forever, ancient and alien, yet synchronized perfectly with the human vessels. And Vaylor felt the full terror of their situation, knowing that survival depended not on courage or firepower, but on understanding the rules imposed by beings far more advanced than themselves. Another message resonated, calm but chilling. You are alive only because you have entered with caution. Any attempt to defy will result in destruction. Learn respect, or remain forever contained. Vaylor swallowed hard, gripping the console as he realized that the Empire had underestimated both humanity and the dead zone, and that this containment was a lesson in humility, patience, and awareness, and that even now, every pulse, every movement, every thought was being measured and anticipated, leaving no room for error. As the fleet drifted, he could see the precision with which the human ships formed layers around them, invisible yet inescapable, and the dead zone pulsed like a heartbeat, alive and aware, feeding energy to the containment, ensuring that no vessel could slip free. And Vaylor understood that their survival depended entirely on learning what it meant to respect a power far greater than the Empire itself. Officers whispered in fear and awe as light rippled from the structures, the dead zone and the humans acting as one, controlling and observing. And Vaylor realized that this experience would mark the Empire forever, a lesson carved not with violence but with presence and authority, and that the humans had proven that true power was in anticipation, discipline, and absolute control, leaving the Empire fleet humbled, terrified, and alive only because they had not yet defied the forces around them, trapped entirely in the living, vigilant embrace of the dead zone. The Radiant Spear and the rest of the Empire fleet drifted deeper into the dead zone, every officer aware of the suffocating pressure of being watched, as if invisible hands gripped their minds and hearts, and Captain Vaylor felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever, knowing that one wrong command, one rash thought, could lead to instant destruction, while the human dreadnoughts maintained their silent formation around the fleet, glowing faintly with energy that pulsed in rhythm with the ancient machinery scattered throughout the zone, and the dead zone itself seemed alive, responding to every movement, every adjustment, every sensor reading of the Empire ships, predicting their reactions, and subtly forcing them to comply with a system beyond comprehension. The crew whispered among themselves, fear and awe mixing in their voices, as sensors reported strange energy fluctuations and gravitational distortions that defied logic, making it clear that the Empire had entered a place it could neither dominate nor escape, and Vaylor's hands tightened on the console as he realized the full scope of their predicament. The humans did not need to attack, for the dead zone and the fleet's presence alone imposed perfect control and enforced obedience. Suddenly, the voice of the Revenant, calm, deep, and unwavering, resonated across the fleet and in their minds. You are observed. You are contained. Your actions are known before they occur. Any attempt at defiance will end your survival. Vaylor's stomach twisted as the words sank in, and he understood that the Empire's fleet was no longer in command of its fate, but a subject under absolute surveillance, its movements anticipated and every weapon monitored and neutralized without physical contact, leaving officers trembling, their pride subdued by fear and awe, and the dead zone pulsed in response, faint lights flickering across enormous alien structures, signaling that every microsecond of the fleet's existence was being measured, recorded, and evaluated, teaching them a lesson in humility that no warship, no number of soldiers, could challenge. Another pulse of energy ran through the fleet, disrupting shields and engines momentarily, forcing minor adjustments and reminding every crew member that they were inside a system that anticipated every possible move. And Vaylor realized that even the most advanced Imperial technology could not resist the subtle control exerted by the humans and the dead zone, which worked together in perfect harmony, alive and intelligent, to enforce obedience without firing a shot. He looked at his officers and saw fear etched on every face, wide eyes staring at the displays, hands trembling over controls, as they began to grasp the terrifying reality. They were alive only because humanity allowed it, contained within a living system that rendered arrogance and pride meaningless. And the voice came again, steady and unyielding. You are alive only because you have entered. Cautiously. Any aggressive action will trigger immediate response. Respect our space and learn restraint. Vaylor swallowed hard, feeling the full magnitude of the human's lesson, knowing that the Empire had walked blindly into a trap it could never have imagined, and as the dead zone pulsed around them, interacting with the human fleet to enforce containment, he felt the helplessness of their situation settle like a stone in his chest, understanding that no tactics, no weapons, no clever maneuvering could change the outcome. The Empire's only hope lay in obedience, patience, and respect. The human ships shifted subtly, maintaining perfect geometric formations, creating layers of containment around every Imperial vessel, their presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. And Vaylor realized that the human's control was not brute force, but discipline, foresight, and an unparalleled understanding of space, energy, and strategy. A lesson in power that required no destruction to enforce. Minor pulses and flashes of energy ran through the fleet, causing sensors to spike and engines to hesitate. And officers whispered in fear, realizing that even small miscalculations could trigger total immobilization. Yet the humans did not strike, merely observed and guided the Empire fleet within the living structure of the dead zone, reinforcing the lesson that survival was conditional upon understanding boundaries and respecting forces far beyond their comprehension. Vaylor's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan, but every thought seemed anticipated, neutralized by the pervasive awareness of the humans and the dead zone itself, and the voice spoke again, calm, powerful, and omnipresent. You are alive. You are observed. You are contained. Learn respect, or you will remain here forever. The weight of the words pressed on every officer, teaching through fear and awe, humility and realization, and Vaylor knew that the Empire had underestimated the true scale of humanity's power and the ancient systems that protected their space. As the fleet drifted, the dead zone pulsed with faint light across alien structures, moving subtly as if aware of every microsecond, every hesitation, and every breath of the Empire crew, and Vaylor could feel the lesson embedding itself into the minds of all aboard. Power without understanding was dangerous. Arrogance led only to containment and helplessness, and the humans were not only advanced but patient, disciplined, and absolute in their control. And the Radiant Spear, along with the entire fleet, floated helplessly, humbled, terrified, and aware for the first time that they were not masters of this space, but students of a force far older, far wiser, and far stronger than any they had ever faced. The Radiant Spear and the remaining Empire fleet drifted silently as the dead zone seemed to pulse around them, ancient energy fields weaving with the human fleet to create a cage so precise that no ship could escape without consent, and Captain Vaylor felt a weight unlike anything he had ever known pressing on his mind and chest, knowing that the survival of every officer and crew member depended entirely on obedience, patience, and understanding, for one wrong move could bring destruction in a heartbeat. The human dreadnoughts moved like ghosts, enormous and graceful, forming layers of containment around the Empire ships, their hulls glowing with subtle light that seemed almost alive, shifting patterns in response to every adjustment of speed, trajectory, and shield output. And Vaylor realized that the humans were not simply observing. They were interacting with the dead zone itself, a system of ancient structures and machines that responded to thought, intention, and action with perfect precision, forcing the Empire fleet into a position of total helplessness while teaching a lesson in power, discipline, and restraint. The voice of the Revenant echoed across the fleet and directly into the minds of the officers, calm but overwhelming. You have entered forbidden space. You are contained. You are observed. Any aggressive action will end your survival. You will leave only if you learn respect for power beyond your understanding. Vaylor's heart pounded as he realized the absolute truth of these words. The Empire had violated rules that were not merely political, but enforced by intelligence, technology, and forces beyond their comprehension. And the Dead Zone, alive and vigilant, responded to every twitch of thought, every subtle movement, and every pulse of energy from the ships, making resistance not only impossible but meaningless. The human ships adjusted their formation, subtle shifts of kilometers executed flawlessly, demonstrating control so precise that the Empire officers could barely follow the movements, and the Dead Zone itself seemed to breathe and pulse in rhythm with them, sending small energy waves that flickered shields, engines, and sensors, reminding the crew that their every decision was anticipated, observed, and contained, leaving them humbled and terrified, yet alive only because humanity allowed it. Vaylor glanced at his officers, pale and tense, realizing that centuries of pride, arrogance, and confidence in imperial power had been crushed by the silent perfection of containment. And yet the lesson was not delivered through violence but presence, observation, and absolute authority, teaching that survival depended on respect, discipline, and awareness rather than firepower or numbers. Another pulse passed through the fleet, slightly affecting navigation and shields, and Vaylor felt a shiver run through him as he understood that this was intentional, a subtle nudge to show control without harm, to impress upon the Empire the difference between brute force and mastery. And the humans communicated once more. "We are guardians. Your Empire has trespassed. You will leave only if you accept this lesson. Power without understanding is meaningless. Pride without restraint is dangerous. Respect the borders you do not understand." Vaylor swallowed hard and nodded, speaking quietly to his crew that their survival now depended on total compliance, and internalizing the lesson. And the officers exchanged nervous, relieved glances, understanding that disobedience could mean death, while obedience meant they would live to return home with knowledge they had never known. As the fleet drifted toward the border of human space, the Revenant and its companions maintained perfect formation, guiding every movement, and Vaylor observed the Dead Zone structures, massive alien constructs scattered across the region, pulsing faintly with energy as if alive, interacting with the human ships to enforce containment, creating a living network that could anticipate every possible action of the Empire vessels. And he realized that humanity's control was both absolute and invisible, a combination of technology, intelligence, and patience that no Empire could challenge directly. Another calm, resonant message filled the minds of the crew. "You are alive because you chose caution. You are observed. Remember this lesson. Respect, restraint, and understanding are greater than pride, power, and aggression. You may leave only with knowledge." Vaylor felt a mixture of relief, awe, and fear, understanding that centuries of imperial arrogance had been confronted by patience and precision, and that their survival had depended entirely on learning humility. The fleet slowly moved toward the edge of the Dead Zone, every movement measured, every adjustment subtle and careful, as the human ships held position, silently enforcing the boundaries. And Vaylor realized that even now, as they approached the border, the Dead Zone and its guardians would continue to observe, ever vigilant, ready to act if a lesson was forgotten. And he felt a permanent shift within himself and his officers, a recognition that humanity's strength was not in battle alone, but in foresight, discipline, and absolute mastery of forces beyond understanding. The last pulse ran across the fleet. Engines and shields flickered momentarily in perfect harmony with the human vessels and Dead Zone structures, and the voice spoke one final time. "You may leave. Do not return without understanding. You are observed. You are contained. You are alive only because you respected our power." Vaylor exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body, and glanced at his crew, seeing awe, relief, and newfound respect in their faces, knowing that the Empire had survived not through combat or cunning, but by humility, patience, and understanding. And as the Radiant Spear and its fleet crossed back into Imperial space, the Dead Zone pulsed once more, silent, alive, and vigilant, a reminder that humanity's lessons were eternal, their presence absolute, and that the Empire would carry the memory of this encounter forever, humbled, terrified, and changed, understanding finally that power without wisdom is dangerous, and that the humans were guardians not to be challenged, but respected.